Hello everyone, hello everyone. Welcome to the BlockHouse. Welcome to the second edition of the Quebec Bitcoin Mining Meetup. So welcome everyone. We are live, broadcasting live on the World Crypto Network right now. Same as last meetup. So please keep your questions for the end. We're not going to have any interruptions on the lineup from the top to finish for the benefit of our live viewers. So on that note, thank you everyone for coming here. I'm just going to start with a quick words on where we are, what we're doing. We are at the BlockHouse. The BlockHouse is Catallaxy's Center of Excellence. And really the event of tonight really symbolizes what we're trying to achieve, which is a center of expertise where the experts can collaborate together and produce some really interesting content, and also a place of knowledge sharing where we get to present to you some of our findings, some of our research, and trying to share this information and give you some insight into our world. So I'll just get into the agenda of the day, and in the process also reveal our guest speaker for the night. And I also forgot to mention, this event is organized by Catallaxy, obviously, and also Decentral Technologies via Jonathan and Bertrand. So the agenda of tonight is we're going to start with 10 facts about Bitcoin mining, then follow with a very in-depth presentation on the unseen economic effects of the Bitcoin mining industry. Is going to be a really interesting talk. And then we're going to have a presentation by Orion Miner announcing their new miner. And then finally, the special guest tonight is Jan Brains, the CEO of Slushpool. So Slushpool is the world's oldest and largest Slushpool is the world's oldest and largest Bitcoin mining pool, and they're going to be talking to us today about a lot of things, including AsicBoost and the blockchain defensive patent license, the topic that Jonathan is also going to cover. So without further ado, I think we're just going to get right into it. We're going to try to do this every meetup, so just random facts about Bitcoin mining, stuff that we find interesting. And when I did this, I found that there was one important fact and 9 smaller facts. So the first fact about Bitcoin mining that's really fascinating is the electricity consumption of the Bitcoin network. So Jonathan's going to show you a little bit more later how we calculated that. But essentially, we calculated that at maximum, the Bitcoin network consumes 27 terawatt hours of electricity per year. This is the equivalent of a 3,100 megawatt facility running full time. So we had upper bands, lower bands. The average was, if I remember correctly, something like 18.4. So what does this mean? Like, what is the scale of this number? I'm sure a lot of people have no idea what 27.4 terawatt hours per year looks like. I'll just give you something to put in context, right? So at a rate of, and everything's in USD, at a rate of 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour in USD, excusez-moi. At a rate of 4.5 cents kilowatt hour per kilowatt hour, this is about $1.2 billion worth of electricity, which is consumed every year in USD. The total energy generated in Quebec, which is 170 terawatt hours, and purchased in Quebec, which is 30 terawatt hours, is obviously 200 terawatt hours. So this means that Bitcoin consumes about 13% of Quebec's annual electricity consumption. So this also means that Quebec's annual electricity consumption could power the Bitcoin network for 7 years. And at this moment, there's about 140 terawatt hours worth of accumulated water, which is stored in our dams, like a snapshot of the water there is, which itself could power Bitcoin entirely for 5 years. So Quebec's annual electricity surplus is 13.4 terawatt hours, according to Journal de Montréal, which is about 50% of what the entire Bitcoin network consumes. Or in other words, if we dedicated 100% of our surplus to Bitcoin, we would have half of the Bitcoin network in Quebec without producing a single additional unit of energy. So that was the fact one. It's a long fact, but I think it's a really interesting number that puts a lot of things in perspective. So fact 2 is that we have about 800 days left until the next halving, which is scheduled to occur about May 2020. So at this point, the block reward of the miners will fall from 12.5 bitcoins per block to 6.25 new coins per block. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow. The Bitcoin network difficulty has almost doubled since January 2018, and the price has dropped by 50%. So all things being equal, a Bitcoin miner is making 4 times less weekly USD revenue this week than he was 4 months ago at the peak of the Bitcoin price. So a significant decline in profitability. At current market rate, the aggregated gross mining income is about $17 million USD per day. Another fact number 5, is that the amount of energy consumed by Bitcoin miners is in no way linked to the volume of transactions on the network. In fact, it's in no way linked to what's inside a Bitcoin block. There could be 1 transaction or 1,000,000. And we put this there because we saw in the newspapers people saying like, well, if we increase the transactions by 10, they're going to consume 10 times more energy, which is obviously not the case. Another fact number 6, is that 80% of all the Bitcoins have been mined. So if you want to mine some Bitcoin, you better get to it. Another fact number 7, is that Bitcoin users are right now paying about 30 Bitcoins per day in fees to the miners, which is down from a high of 700 about 3 months ago and an all-time high of 1,170 Bitcoins in one block. Fact number 8 is that the miners' proof of work, their work, is audited in real time by Bitcoin nodes. So both the proof of work that the miner is doing and the validation both the proof of work is audited by the nodes, and the nodes also make sure that the miner is respecting the rules of Bitcoin when they're creating their block. So in this sense, miners don't vote for protocol upgrades. Fact number 9 is that Bitcoin mining is always profitable for the most competitive miner because of the Bitcoin difficulty adjustment. So we always hear what happens if the price of Bitcoin drops, the miners are going to go out of business. Well, obviously, if the price of Bitcoin drops, the miners are going to drop, the hash rate is going to drop, and when the hash rate drops, it's going to become, again, profitable from some miners until we reach an equilibrium. And fact number 10 is really cool. So we got some really cool researchers from Concordia University. I think they're in the house tonight. Cheyenne, are you in the house? No. But you got some researchers from Concordia University that did a research on the cryptojacking concept, the concept of having websites which will infect users' browsers with little miners and like try to get the people visiting a website to mine on their browser, which is illegal. It's malware. But they did a research and they demonstrated that CoinHive, a very popular implementation, running on 100,000 machines with 100,000 visits, of about an average of 30 seconds each, only generated $7 of revenue after 3 months. So cryptojacking is not a profitable venture as it is implemented right now, at least in the wild. So thank you for that. And on this note, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Jonathan Bertrand. He is the founder and president of Decentral Technologies, a cryptocurrency mining and mining research and mining installation and mining everything firm in Montreal that is helping Catallaxy a lot produce a lot of educational content for the public. So he's has a great presentation. I went through it. It's so much information. So get ready to get a direct mine download of some of Quebec's best mining experts, Jonathan Bertrand.
All right, thank you, Francis, for this crazy intro. So, obviously, nobody can make a credible claim about the current electric power without asking from the miners. And this is a quote I took from Marc Bévin, which is the person on whom I based those numbers. So he is the inceptor of the numbers we're going to be viewing in the next slides. Although I did revise those numbers, so they are very accurate. And we did some estimation on our own as well, and they did match his numbers. So without any more wasting time, let's see, first of all, what's the energy consumption used by the Bitcoin network? Well, in January 2018, as seen in the meetup number 1, it is at the moment, well, it would be in January 2018, 0.025%. So it's and we can assume that the GDP was affected by far more than 0.02% of the consumption here. Most miners are forced to use hydroelectric power. Why? Well, Obviously, mining is a really long-term investment, so miners are going to be looking for energy sources that will last a long time. Also, hydroelectric power in the world has shown to be more profitable, so it's normally a resource, energy resource that costs far less than oil and other industries. Mining will grow its energy footprint for sure, but we can assume it's going to remain relatively small, and that was explained by Francis just before. Because of the difficulty concept, you know that miners are going to get unprofitable at some point. So there's always two forces. There's always the Bitcoin price force that is putting an upward force on the hash power, and we could assume that it's going to be a upward force also on the electric consumption, obviously. But there's also some other forces. So for instance, we got the hardware. The hardware consumes less and less joules per gigahashes to produce the same amount of hashes. So knowing that, we know that there's also a down pressure because as more miners that are more efficient are being added into the network, while all the less efficient miners are being thrown out of the market. So we can see that if we were to have a market cap of about $1 trillion on Bitcoin, we would expect around 0.74% of the energy consumed in the world, and that is the energy. That's not the electricity. So in that case, let me just see. In that case, it would be 0.25%, so it's not a big difference. 0.13%. So if the it would probably directly or indirectly increase the world GDP by the same amount. So we can again assume that Bitcoin was affected by more than 24%, 0.024. So, sorry about that. A bit stressed. All right, so Bitcoin is already a net benefit on the economy. We can see that there was about 729 Bitcoin companies that were created in the last years, around 1,000 jobs. That's worldwide. But just here in Quebec, there's a lot of jobs that are being created, not just for Bitcoin mining, but for the whole Bitcoin mining ecosystem. And it is really important to remember that when Bitcoin miners are announcing jobs, so for instance, we have Bitfarms here that announced 250 jobs in Quebec. Well, what they really announce is 1,000 jobs worldwide, because Bitcoin knows no political borders. So when the Bitcoin blockchain is being powered, really it allows all the ecosystem to flourish, and there's far more jobs that are being created than what we can see. But we're going to cover that a bit more in the next slides. And as you can see, well, the power consumption in the upper bound, so we're going to see just here. This is the energy efficiency that we use to average the mining consumption around the world. So the lower bound uses the current best hardware, that is the Antminer S9. The Antminer S9 uses around 0.1 joules per gigahash. The new Dragon Mint that should be, well, that is actually shipping right now, and that I should receive this week, is going to have a consumption around 0.07 joules per gigahash. So we can see already a 30% increase there, or a 30% decrease in power consumption. Then if we look at the best guess estimation, so that would be an average of the miners that should be profitable to mine right now, we have 0.13 joules per gigahash. And lastly, if we look at the upper bound, so that would be like the worst case of the profitable miners that are still mining right now, we would have an average of around 0.2 joules per gigahash. So now for the unseen of Bitcoin mining. First, I'm going to read a small quote from Frédéric Bastiat. In the economic sphere, an act, an habit, an institution, a law produces not only one effect, but a series of effects. Of these effects, the first one is immediate. It appears simultaneously with its cause. It is seen. The other effects emerge only subsequently. They are not seen. We are fortunate if we foresee them. There is only one difference between a bad economist and a good one. The bad economist confines themselves to the visible effect. The good economist takes into account both the effect that can be seen and those effects that must be foreseen. So the unseen of Bitcoin mining, you might have seen lately there was a theft that was done in a cryptocurrency mine here in Quebec. It was around $1 million of equipment stolen. To be precise, it was $800,000. And just on the upper right, you'll see XCBD cartoon. And I'm going to read it because it's really worded. It depicts the $5 wrench attack, and I've been speaking a lot about this attack. The $5 wrench attack basically is saying, so you have this fancy encryption, this fancy stuff like treasures, and well, you just have an attacker that comes to break your stuff. What is he going to try? Is he going to try to break your encryption? Well, obviously not. You're a human, so what he's going to try is use physical force against you. So he's going to take an hammer, punch on it, and like smash your head until you give him the password. So there are various ways to protect against that, and there's also various ways to protect your facility against physical aggressions. We won't be able to cover them all right now, but obviously I would recommend that you look a bit more into Trezor's password capability, because it allows you to use different passwords for different accounts that you can just hide, and basically you can have an account with just a small amount of coins that are just a distraction for if you ever get robbed or whatever. It's important. Oh yeah, and there was a thing I wanted to mention here. A lot of people I've seen in the comments of the medias that when this theft happened, a lot of people were like, "Oh well, good for them. Anyways, they're just like polluting. They're just polluters. They're taking all our energy and all that stuff." But really, I think Quebecers overreacted here, because those guys, first of all, they're part of us. They're part of our nation. They're Quebecers, but they've been contributing a lot to our nation. We can estimate on the last year revenues that they've been contributing around $150,000 in tax revenue, and they've probably consumed around $200,000 of energy. So that is, I believe, these guys have produced a lot of value for our nation, and we should actually a theft against those miners is a theft against all Quebecers, in my belief. Now, for the unseen in the mining industry, so cryptocurrency-based businesses, geographical locations like here, they're built all over the world, and they're here to stay. We also seen lately the Bitcoin monument. So you might have seen there was a big B dropped at around street. I don't recall how we say that. Many industries and businesses and other entities seek to leverage cryptocurrency and mining for their own uses. So, for instance, we've seen an operation of tomato growing with the excess heat of the miners. So there's a lot of second use that you can give to your miners. And a lot of people are looking to exploit that. For instance, another instance here in Quebec, since it's cold most of the year, there are some workers that work in industries that are normally open door, and they heat those industries at loss. Well, now you can turn the heat that is normally well, that would be a waste, yeah, and that would be an expense. That was what I was looking for. So that would be an expense, and now you turn it into income, even if it's just a small income because the mining difficulty drops, or because you have the last gen equipment. It still can be profitable in the case that you were anyways eating at loss. Mining exists in many forms and will require extensive studies by the government institutions before they can appropriately create new classes of equipment, tax regulations, and legal structures. And well, that again, if you use a heater, so we've seen the company Pouliot, which done a home heater with 2 GPUs that just basically run the ounces. Well, are you going to make a heater like a taxable event for the gains made with it, or are you there's also you could basically take an Excel spreadsheet and count the node yourself. So if you fall on the correct nonce and you broadcast it, will it be a taxable event? So these are all questions that our government is looking into and is going to have to look into really faster, but these takes time. With the appropriate structure provided by regulators, we will see the cryptocurrency market stabilize substantially and an organic price balance within the market. Obviously, Bitcoin doesn't need the regulators to approve of it. Bitcoin is here to stay, but if the regulators accept it and want to regulate it, it's going to give proper boundaries to the industries that are trying to operate within those boundaries. So that are trying to operate within those boundaries. So yeah, so regulation would be a welcome thing, especially in the mining industry. The cost of mining blocks is the capital cost required to acquire the miner and the power consumption of running the hardware. You might also have you have the excess heat that you might have to throw away. So it really depends on what's the use case of your mining. Now, for the unseen of the electric industry, mining for cryptocurrency it's known. I think it draws a lot of energy. The infrastructure behind mining, so the HVACs or cooling, if you use cooling, is also very energy intensive. So, well, good news, Quebec is one of the largest hydroelectric power producers in the world and routinely produces a surplus in mining, meaning we got cheap electricity. So Quebec has the capacity, but it is not used to having so much big demand. And we can also assume here that there's a lot of investors that seize the opportunity. So they've been trying really big numbers that doesn't make sense. If those numbers were ever to come to existence, like if those mining operations were all to come to existence, like mining would be worldwide not profitable. So again, I think there's a lot of media exaggeration there and a lot of fear-mongering. So yeah. So in Quebec, Canada, Iceland, and Russia, we all have exceeding power. They all have pretty good rates for mining, very comparable to China, which is right now the main producer of mining. So, and a lot of the demand also has been coming from China. So we know, I believe a lot of people here know that China has been looking into banning the mining of Bitcoin over there. So this led to a lot of demand of existing operations that also want to just to get out of the country simply. So the current craze is very temporary, and if Hydro-Quebec doesn't act like in a timely manner, well, it's going to be a lost opportunity, and it's not going to last that long. So they really have, in my opinion, they really have to act quickly on that. So yeah, another really important point I want to see in the electricity industry is that the Bitcoin mining actually incentivizes green energy, and so the main problem with producing green energy is that you need to have a way to consume all the surplus. Like, it's really unstable, and when you have surpluses that are being produced with your green energy, well, you're not going to make money out of it. So you have wind turbines that just turn into for nothing. So if we can just drop ship mining container, for instance, over there, like it's been done right now by some people here in Canada, they're doing in Alberta. They're just dropping containers. They drop ship the containers. They take the excess energy that is taken from the gas, for instance, when they do the oil drilling. They pump it out, and there's also some natural gases that are being wasted. So these are now used instead of being wasted. So actually, and those gas normally turn into methane, and now this methane, there's no methane. There's actually less methane emissions because we use this natural gas. So there's actually less pollution because of that mining, and there's the energy that would have been otherwise thrown away is now used for a very, very useful case. So the HVAC industry, miners produce heat, so it can decrease their productivity in very heat spots. There's also some spots that have to turn off some machines. So the heat is really one of the main enemies of the Bitcoin mining. Large amount of cooling can be required, and in those other countries, well, obviously you don't want to use cooling because you know that people like us Quebecers have access to free cooling, basically. So, and they know that it's an additional cost of 30% on their power consumption. So yeah, basically, other countries have a very big struggle to do Bitcoin mining. Countries with cold weather obviously have a strong competitive advantage in this regard, and well, it's not a secret that it's the case of the Quebec. And in Canada in general. So the residual waste can be recycled and resold. Again, we've seen it with the tomatoes, for instance. It can be shared between industries. So if you have a lot of industries around you, there's also some studies that are being done for geothermal applications. So basically, you would take all the heat from the miners and put them into the ground, a common ground that all the people could go and just fetch this heat. For instance, let's say that you store all this heat during the summer. You could then during the winter go take that heat out of the geothermal thing that you've done. I don't remember the name. Well, obviously it's going to have an effect on the IT industry. There is no formal requirement, obviously, for Bitcoin mining. There's a lot of self-made Bitcoin miners, I believe. And, well, there's not very much of a formation of a certification out there, so it's like it mainly attracts self-made people. Bitcoin mining is ideal for those that enjoy network IT, that are passionate about the potential of a decentralized currency, maybe also people that were present at the internet inception. Internet inception. I unfortunately was too young for that, but I know that a lot of people were idealists that seen the internet as this big decentralized network, and we've failed. We see that lately with Facebook and all those platforms that are being hacked and centralized. So I believe that this is a revival also of the decentralized spirit that was alive back in the days. And there's even a Montreal-based chips designing firm that you're going to meet just after. So there's a lot happening here in Quebec. So for the economics of mining, we're going to see the economics of mining before seeing the actual economic benefits of mining. So in a nutshell, a Bitcoin miner makes money when they find a 32-bit value, which when hashed together with the data from the other transactions, so the whole block that they're doing, gives a hash with a certain number of zeros that begins with a certain number of zeros. When the node finds the proof of work, so then the miners, the hashers, are the machines that you always see in the media. But these hashers, these machines, the miners, they actually connect to a pool. So this pool as a node, and this is the actual mining job is done on the pool. It's not done on the mine. So myself, really, I'm just part of a miner. I'm just the hasher part of the mining, and I send my results back to the pool. And this pool as a node, Bitcoin node, that verifies all the transaction, makes a block, and broadcasts it all to all the other nodes that is connected. So over time, mining Bitcoin is getting more and more complex. This is one of the complications that we've seen lately. So when at its inception, Bitcoin was done, every nodes were mining nodes or mostly, and then we had the GPUs that came in. So some CPU miners dropped, and then we have the FPGA, and finally the ASIC generation. Now, what we can see also is that with every phases of mining, we have a decreasing wattage that is required to produce the same amount of hashes, as I've mentioned previously. And we can see that in 2010, I believe that was still CPU in that time. We used around 450 watts per gigahash. In 2012 already, we more than halved that for 72 watts. Then in 2013, 6 watts. And lately, we're going to see here with the ASICs. So this doesn't include, at the moment, the Elong. And again, those numbers are by Marc Bevin. So thanks again, Marc Bevin. So you can see that the worst, and that was in 2014. So this part here on the left is in 2014, and the part on the right is just before the Dragon Mints, basically, so it's up to today. The best joule per gigahash and the worst joule per gigahash. It's important to note that the 0.06 that is up there is with Bitfury, only with the water-cooled miners. So the air miners are still around 0.1. So yeah, that's basically it for this here. Now the economic benefits. So well, a lot of people have been complaining about the GPUs that have been rising lately, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Yes, obviously there are miners that are ordering a lot of GPUs, but it's not the only thing. AMD and NVIDIA are pretty small player relatively to Apple and even Samsung. And these players have been using the same chip technology now for their latest product, the latest smartphones. And smartphone is a far bigger market than GPUs. Although they do have big orders, but the competition for the TSMC chips at the moment is very, very, very high, and a lot of this also relates to the actual ASICs. So the TSMC production so far in this year was 1/10 of the production was concentrated by Bitmain, basically using producing their ASICs there. So we know that they've been producing around 300,000 units per month lately, and we now see that there's an overflow of miners right now that are being trying to be sell. We expect that to change, obviously, with the price of Bitcoin that is going to keep on varying with the future. So where we have idle power, where we have idle power that's not being used, why not relocate a Bitcoin mine? So here in Quebec, we have so many surpluses and a lot of other places. So what we can do is really just pinpoint the places, the distribution centers of energy that have surpluses, and just allow miners to go there. Obviously, all those miners connecting won't it won't stop you from heating your home in the winter, basically. So I think it's an unfounded fear. Miners are increasingly looking for stable political environment where they can deploy their capital investment and plan their business effort to 4 to 5 years in advance. So again, Bitcoin mining is a very long-term investment. Most of the miners, they want to deploy for 5 years, 10 years, even 15 years in some cases. So they need to have a big degree of assurance that the political climate where they are establishing their operations will be compliant. Countries like Canada are looking to lower Bitcoin mining operations, and we've seen, for instance, Bitfury and Hut8 announcing a 60 megawatt operation just 2 weeks ago, I believe, in the West. This is effectively unlocking a huge amount of value globally. So again, I believe the GDP was far more affected by Bitcoin mining and all other Bitcoin industries than what it actually consumes in energy. Bitcoin mining operations can... Well, this one is messed up, but basically, Bitcoin mining operations can be done as an hobby or as an industry. So you can basically have just one miner or a million miner. It really depends on the there's no scale really. It really depends on how you're going to manage it. And again, the point of mining is to get more coins than what you sacrificed to get the miner. If it costs, so for instance, lately, those that have been buying miners lately, they probably won't recoup their investment in Bitcoin terms, in my opinion. So the goal again is really to get more coins that either with your Canadian or your US, when you're buying a machine, you want to get more coins out of this machine than what you could buy at the moment at the market price. So the next gen hardware. So we have the Dragon Mint here, and we also have the Orion mining team that will be announcing their miner. So unfortunately, I wanted to have the demo like tonight, but the miners shipped yesterday, I believe. So obviously, it's not in my hands yet. So since it's now impossible to profitably mine Bitcoin with your computer, you're going to need a specialized computer that is called an ASIC. So for those that still don't understand exactly what an ASIC is, basically an ASIC is a Bitcoin mining machine. So this machine can only do one thing, and in the case of Bitcoin mining machine, it just mines Bitcoin. So it has no other use than SHA-256 or maybe some aircrack or whatever else that uses SHA-256, but there's not a lot of, there's no other profitable use, and that's the point with proof of work. So the hardware, well, this is what we got so far. So there's not a lot of picture yet. It's still a lot scarce. But we have the Dragon Mint here. That's how it should look, the interface. It's still a bit buggy, so from what I've read, but it's delivering its promised 16 terahashes so far. There's going to be also a lot of updates on the dashboard and the firmware I've been reading lately. It's CK, by the way. Those who don't know, CK is the ones doing the CK pool. He's been doing the tweaks on the firmware for a long, so it's a pretty known source. He's, as we say on Bitcoin Talk, he's legendary. And I'm gonna let Orion Mining present you their new miners.
So hello, everyone. We're really excited to be here tonight and introduce our company, Orion Crypto Mining. My name is Kevin Wang, and I'm here with some of my partners, Tobias No and Francois Nguyen. And first off, I just want to thank Catallaxy, Decentral, RCGT, and BlockHouse for putting together and hosting this meetup. It's great to see how strong the crypto community here in Quebec. and especially the enthusiasm for mining. Just a quick show of hands, how many people in this room here tonight are currently doing some form of mining? Okay, yeah, that's awesome to see. So we were asked to speak here tonight. We wanted to share a little bit about our company, Orion. We want to make some announcements about some of the products that we have coming out. And we also thought it would be interesting for everyone to walk through, well, what does it take to create a new miner? What does it take to bring a new miner onto the market and all the steps? So we're going to, at a high level, go through that as well. And those are basically all the steps that we've been going through. So Orion, as I mentioned, is a new crypto mining hardware company. Our mission is to provide reliable and innovative mining hardware to ensure the decentralized nature of cryptocurrencies. We have very strong roots here in Quebec, since all of the partners actually originally met here in Quebec a long time ago. We have since sort of scattered throughout the world, but we still very fond about Quebec. And so we're really proud to be part of the crypto community here and just to see how much the ecosystem is growing, and even events like this have been awesome to see. So all of the partners of Orion, we've been passionate about crypto and especially Bitcoin for a long time, and we saw a real opportunity to introduce basically a new hardware company onto the market and provide more options. So over the last few years, there's probably been like a limited choice in terms of acquiring hardware, and we really believe for a decentralized network, no one entity or one company should have so much power, and so we really believe in sort of democratizing sort of whether it's mining or who's manufacturing the hardware. We really saw an opportunity, so that's why around this time last year is when we started Orion. We were pretty much in stealth mode for the last year as we're doing the planning and the designing, but now we're ready to make some announcements and share some of what we've been up to. Also, I want to mention that we are just manufacturing the miners, the hardware. We're not running a mining operation ourselves, so that also avoids some potential conflict of interest. We just want to focus on designing chips and manufacturing the miners and selling the miners. So the partners that are here today, myself, Tobias, and Francois, we're primarily focused on sort of the business development and sales and marketing for Orion. We've all been involved in crypto for a while, either personally or professionally, whether it's trading or even doing our own mining or coding a little bit. For example, prior to starting Orion, I was the head of product for a blockchain company in New York called Paxos. Paxos was designing their own proprietary blockchain to do post-trade settlement for financial services. Paxos also owns a Bitcoin exchange called itBit, which was the first fully regulated exchange in the US. They became what is known as a chartered trust company, so that is something I helped launch as well in New York a couple of years ago. Some of you may be familiar with the exchange Gemini, the Winklevi exchange. They also got the same regulatory status, but I'm happy to say we were the first. So, even though the three of us here tonight are based in North America, we actually have most of our team, which is a much larger engineering team, is based in Asia, and they have a lot of expertise in integrated circuit design. So they've been designing ASIC chips even before Bitcoin existed. For other industries like aerospace and telecom, any hardware that needed very specific chips. And of course, when Bitcoin came onto the scene, there was a huge demand for ASIC designs. And so then a lot of the team actually have been designing ASICs for miners for quite a long time. So even though Orion is a new company, most of the team has a lot of experience in this space. And actually, you can see here on the slide just the background of some of the team and the companies that they've come from. So I'm happy to announce tonight that we're launching 2 models that we'll have. The first one is the Orion 1. It's going to use a 12 nanometer process chip, and that's going to ship later this year. The specs, it's going to hash at about 18 terahashes a second and use a power consumption of about 1,440 watts. And so that makes the efficiency about 0.08 joules per gigahash or watts per gigahash. So those specs compare pretty favorably to the current crop of miners that are out there, some of the ones that Jonathan was showing you before. So that's the first one that we're going to have out. Other things about it, we're designing the form factor of the miners, so the dimensions, to be pretty consistent with what's out there today. You guys probably can imagine the leaders that are out there today. And this was based on feedback that we got early on when we were doing the planning from a lot of the larger mining operations. They already have infrastructure built out in terms of their racks and all the powers and stuff. They wanted to be able to just keep their infrastructure and swap out the old units with our new units. So it was important for us to keep the dimensions pretty similar. So it'll be similar to what you've seen. Another unique feature that we have is we have what's known as a parallel board layout. So even using a single miner, you'll be able to mine multiple SHA-256 cryptocurrencies at the same time. So for example, you'll dedicate a certain percentage of the miner to mining Bitcoin, and then maybe another percentage to mining Bitcoin Cash simultaneously. So that's a unique property for our miners. So I'm also really excited to say that we have designs for the next model, which is the Orion 3. And that is going to use a next generation 7 nanometer process. And that's scheduled to ship next year. And this is a really new process that a lot of the foundries that manufacture the chips are just now starting to get going with. And because it's a next generation chip, and the transistors are much smaller, basically it means that it's going to be much better than the current generation. So both in terms of the hashing power, which we're estimating to be about 22.5 terahashes, and the efficiency is going to be much better than this current generation. So with that, we wanted to spend some time to just go over sort of our experience of, again, what it takes to develop a new miner to bring to market. We thought it'd be interesting for the community to share. And I just want to level set a little bit. I know Jonathan covered it a little bit, but we talk a lot about ASIC, so I just want to make sure everyone is clear. ASIC stands for Application Specific Integrated Circuit, and all it means it's a chip that's optimized to do one thing very well, but that's it. It can't really do anything else. But that makes it perfect for mining, for example, the SHA-256 algorithm. ASICs, they're programmed to just do that thing, and they can do it very efficiently. They can use low power usage, but that's all they're really good at. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Francois, and he's going to go over the steps of the life cycle.
Thanks for that, Kevin. All right, so let's go over the ASIC miner development lifecycle. So the first thing that we do is we work on the planning. On the planning, what we do is we analyze the algorithm. In our case, is the SHA-256, and we have to understand how that works, how that relates to the requirements on the ASIC. After that, we're going to go through all the design considerations. So the device speed, the transistor size, and the power. After that, we want to finalize the key features of our miner. So we have to discuss the performance trade-offs that we want to take, reliability or ultimate performance, things like that. Once that's done, we move to the front-end design. The front-end design is where we take the chip design specification and we turn it into actual logic gates and computational model. We do that in a language called VHDL, which is a language that implements a register transfer level. So during this implementation, and VHDL, you can see here, it's on the left side of the screen. It's just like it's like a code. It's like Python or C++. So during the implementation, we will run simulation to test that our logics are valid at all times. At the end of the phase, we will compile this into a netlist. And this netlist, what we'll do is we'll put it onto an FPGA, which you can see on the right side over there. I think in this case it's a Xilinx Connect 7. And the whole goal of the FPGA is to validate that our design not only passes all the simulation, all the tests but actually can mine valid shares in a real world mining pool. So fun fact, we have a video demo of our FPGA on our website, so check it out. So once that's done, we'll move on to something we call the backend design. So the backend design is where we're going to work on the placement of these computational and these components onto the chip. So we're not actually putting things on a physical chip yet. We're just creating a design file where things will go. So in this phase, what we do is we do some floor planning. And this is kind of like where we plan where everything will go on the chip. We'll actually do the placements of individual gates. We will do the routing of wires to connect all the components together. And then also in this phase, what we do is we optimize. We work on optimization. And this step will require a bit of work between the back-end design team and the front-end design team. So the goal here is to just squeak out the best performance for this ASIC chip. All throughout this process here, we always follow the manufacturer's design guidelines to ensure that we don't break any rules. Once that phase is done, we move on to the tape out. So the tape out is basically us prepping the design for production. This is where we'll perform our final design review. And once that's passed, we basically prep the files, export it, and send it to the fabrication send it to the foundry for fabrication. So what the foundry will do with this is they'll take our design files and create a photo mask from it. Photo mask is sometimes referred to as a mask. And this mask is very important in the next step, which is the manufacturing. The manufacturing is where the foundry will take some raw silicone, produce wafers out of it, and then apply a process called photolithography, and which will basically shine UV lights onto the photomask, onto the wafer, and etch our chip design onto these wafers. So you can just imagine we have a big wafer, we create a bunch of chips on it, and at the end of it, what we have to do is we have to cut the wafer up to produce the individual chips. Once we have this once that's done, these chips will be packaged and sent for assembly. So the assembly is where we get we have this ASIC chip, which is basically the core piece of the miner, and we're going to combine it with other electronic components, such as the boards, the fans, the heatsink, the network adapter, etc. So I'm going to pass it back to Kevin to finish with the timeline.
Okay, so hopefully you found that informative. So we just want to wrap up today with some of the timelines for our miners that I mentioned earlier that we have coming out. So we're currently doing a pre-sale for the first batches of the Orion 1. That's the first model, the 12 nanometer. So far, we've been working directly with some of the larger mining operations. And that's because for the initial batches, and in the early stages, it's easier to deal with them directly and answer questions, provide due diligence materials that they need to see before we start manufacturing. So that's what we've been doing so far, including talking to a lot of the larger mining operations here at Quebec, which has been very exciting. In the next few weeks, though, we also planning on opening up to the public our online store on our website so that people will be able to place orders directly on the website. If you go to the website, you can sign up for a newsletter, and we'll shoot out an email announcement whenever we're ready to go live. And then the first batches of the Orion 1, we're planning on shipping in October. And after that, we'll have basically a new batch every month after that. Then for the Orion 3, which is sort of the next generation, that's the 7 nanometer process. We'll do a pre-sale for that in October or Q2 of next year, and the first batch of those should ship around Q3 of next year. So with that, thank you again. Feel free to check out our website. Feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. Certainly, if anyone is interested in placing a large bulk order during the pre-sale, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out, and then we'll be hanging around after this meetup as well. If anyone wants to chat. All right, thank you guys very much.
All right, and we're also going to have a Q&A session just after, so if you have any question for Orion, please don't hesitate. So now we're going to pass on to the next subject, which is AsicBoost, and this is going to be covered by Jan Brains, so Jan Sapek from Slushpool. So just let me put him on the screen right now.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, if the sound is good, we can start.
All right.
So hello, my name is Jan Čapek. I'm the CEO of a company called Brain Systems that's been operating Slushpool since 2013. I will try to cover some aspects of AsicBoost, which are on one hand very well known to the general public, but I think they're still being very much confused, and maybe even the whole concept is somehow being demonized, and there's a lot of FUD around this topic. And in fact, if you think about the whole technology, it's like a next logical step in an ASIC design, and this is how the future ASIC chips should probably operate. Anyways, one of the reasons why we decided to provide support for this feature was that recently there has been a big announcement about the blockchain defensive patent license, where actually the authors of or the owners of the patent are announcing that you can actually use the patent in a very open and easy way. The only condition is that you cannot apply any lawsuits against your competitors, and you have to give away your patents and basically join them to the defensive patent license. I'm not a lawyer. We just did our own judgment on this whole thing. So it's somehow convincing for us. And at the same time, I'm not going to cover any exact details of the license because, as I said, we're not lawyer experts. We're the mining pool. Can I ask you for the next slide?
Sure. Here you go.
Okay. So back to our company. It all started around 2010 when Slush actually invented the whole concept of mining pools, which are basically like a hashing rate or computing power concentrators that give away jobs for mining to individual miners or mining farms, and they collect the results, and all the blocks that are found are then equally divided among the miners who have participated in all the rounds. Sometime around 2012, that's when Slush came with his Stratum protocol to replace unfeasible get work at that time. At that time, it was still like a one-man project. Basically, a whole pool was running on one big server and one data center. At around 2013, it was me and Pavel, who is the CTO of Brain Systems, who stepped in and actually started turning the whole project into like a well-operated thing with professional support. We started scaling the infrastructure. I think right now we're in about 10 data centers around the globe. And lately we actually came with a Stratum protocol extension that allows doing something called overt AsicBoost. This presentation is going to be a little bit more technical, but I think it's actually very important to get some insight to actually see that the whole technology is beneficial for the whole industry, because on the long run you're achieving the best ASIC design. Can I ask you for the next slide, please? This is a snapshot of a block that we have mined, and actually this was the first block with AsicBoost, or most probably with AsicBoost in action that our pool has mined so far. The way you can tell that this is a block using the version rolling features, which may indicate that somebody had an overt AsicBoost, is the version field. And when you see the value, it's like 20 and triple F00. So these Fs are actually a mask that we allow the miners to roll the bits inside of it. And basically giving them a range of versions that are valid and that we would accept as a valid block if they find one. Why they actually do the version rolling, I will explain in the next 2 slides. Please, next slide. So this is the official, oh, sorry, can you just go back a bit? Yeah, I was trying to say that there's a lot of noise around all this technology stuff. And when you look at it, so the whole concept is fairly simple. And I think it's an obvious feature that should be turned into hardware eventually. So can you please switch to the next slide? Right. So basically, Bitcoin mining, the way it works is that each miner is given a template of the blockchain header, and its task is to try different fields, try alternating different fields in the header, hashing the header twice, and looking if such header fulfills the current network target condition. That means basically the hashed value of this block or double hashed is smaller than something. What is important to note here, the block header itself is 80 bytes. Since our miners generally use the SHA-256, or that's the hashing function used for the proof of work in Bitcoin, this data is actually split into 2 chunks. The first chunk is 64 bits, and the second chunk is padded with zeros that is also 64 bits, even though this figure looks unscaled a bit. What is important to note, the first chunk is the part of the data where you actually can take care of the AsicBoost. The difference between the overt and covert is that if you change anything in the version field, the network is going to see it, as you saw in the example with the block header where we found one, the block with a version with some Fs in it. Yeah, this one. So this was the overt type, where the miner did some alternation in the version field, and it helped him in a certain way. The covert version, on the other hand, is trying to do exactly the same thing, but it's trying to manipulate the Merkle root. This is a little bit more, this requires a little bit more technical insight in Bitcoin, but for those who are aware of the fact that the block actually contains transactions, and basically a checksum of all the transactions, to really simplify it, is in this Merkle root field. It's basically it's the root hash of the whole tree of the transactions. And there was a design decision, or maybe it was just a coincidence, that Satoshi put into the protocol, where since each hash is 32 bytes, and you see that the Merkle root actually doesn't fit into the chunk 1, and there's 4 bytes basically left for the chunk 2. The point of doing the covered way is that you're trying to find a Merkle root where the tail, so basically the last 4 bytes of the root of the Merkle root are always the same, and you try to find a few different variants of the block of the transaction setup or whichever approach you take that differ in the upper 28 bytes, but the 4 bytes are the same. So what is really common for both of these is that the chunk 2 is always the same. It never changes when you actually compose a mining job for your hashing core, for your hashing chips. So to summarize it again, what matters is chunk 1. This is where you do all the optimization part. You're messing either with the version or with the Merkle root somehow, and you always have to make sure that the chunk 2 is stays constant, and then you load this into your hashing chips. Please switch to the next slide, which explains the SHA-256 hashing function. Here you see a simple message consisting of multiple chunks. Our block header is obviously only chunk 1 and chunk 2. The rest doesn't matter, but this is like a generic approach. And what we can see from the diagram is this expander function. And the expansion is a step in SHA-256 calculation that is not dependent on any previous chunk of data. And this is the whole trick with the AsicBoost, where what you do, or the way you design your ASIC chips, is that you try to share this expansion function or the result of this expansion across multiple cores inside of your ASIC chip, and actually prepare multiple variants of the chunk 1 that you load into the chips. And that's it. Because as you see in the compressor part, you already have some dependence where you change the state of the internal hashing engine based on its previous state. So that's it. I know it just sounds a little bit more involved, but the whole concept is really this expansion step of the SHA-256 function, where we can share this expander across multiple cores. This is for the multi-core design. At the very end of my presentation, there are some QR codes with URLs for those who are interested, where you can actually have a look at the AsicBoost paper explaining the multi-core design. Let's just quickly go through a simple example how the version rolling works. People use two different terms here, AsicBoost and version rolling. Version rolling is a feature where we allowed the Stratum protocol to give miners an option to change the version bits for whatever reason he needs to do that. One of the reasons could be that your miner supports the Average AsicBoost, but another reason would be that maybe you are running a big mining farm and you would like to partition the mining jobs across your mining clusters or whatever to keep them busy for a longer time, and then submit the final result to the pool, and let's say not keep your uplink that much busy. So for this example, the version field provided by the pool, which is part of the Stratum block, is 20000 something. And this is the standard version if no BIP9 voting takes place. In addition to that, when the miner actually tells, okay, I actually support version rolling, so some changes to the version, he provides a mask to the pool saying how many bits and at which positions is the miner willing to work with or to change. This is this 1 and FFE00. So this is altogether 16 bits, I think. The server, on the other hand, may have some internal constraints about how many bits it's going to allow to the miner to change. So it's responding with 1 8 and a few zeros. So basically it's saying, okay, well, I will let you do some changes in the version field, but you can only touch 2 bits, and it's 1/8. This is the bit mask that actually indicates which bits you are supposed to change. And out of this, there is a range of valid versions, which are from 2000 to 38 and 6 zeros. So to summarize all this again, basically the version rolling part is a superset that allows the mining operation to take an advantage of partitioning the jobs across their mining farm. And at the same time, if your miner supports AsicBoost, the other one, so basically it can touch the version field, it allows using the Stratum protocol to talk to our pool operation. Can I ask you for the next slide? We have created a small Stratum protocol extension that basically consists of a feature request saying like, hey, configure the mining. This is a backward incompatible change that allows us to include many more features for the future. But for the time being, the miner basically claims, okay, I either do version rolling or I do something else. If this is true, it means if the mining operation states, okay, we want to configure the mining and we support version rolling, at some point the pool, when it's dispatching the jobs to the miners, it also sets the version mask. So basically it's telling the miners, okay, which bits in the version field you are allowed to change. And for this to work properly with the current share submission request in the Stratum protocol, the mining submit message has been extended with an extra argument that specifies the version mask, the version field that actually the miner used for mining. Yeah. Can you switch to the next slide, please? Okay, so these are the 4 information resources that I recommend having a look at for those who are deeply involved in mining. Most of these things have already been published through our Twitter account. There was some Bitcoin Magazine article about this, and I think I was on Tony Vei's Liberty Life Trail online, where we were discussing some of these things as well. There are actually 2 separate BIPs going on right now. One of them is the BIP published by BTC Drug, who was trying to get the version bits reserved for the rolling part. Then we have a Stratum protocol extension, which is already in a form of a BIP and is to be submitted to the Bitcoin developers. And there is a very interesting website called AsicBoost, and I recommend everybody reading the white paper who is interested in ASIC engineering and things like that. It's a very nice reading, and the guys who actually came up with this smart idea, I mean, my hat's off. It's for me, this is like a masterpiece of engineering. And since the Stratum protocol itself is not very well standardized, we have put together stratumprotocol.org, which basically directs either to our pool where the whole specification is, or it goes to the protocol extension. Next slide, please. No questions. Okay, so we'll probably have some discussion after that. You can find us on Twitter, Onion Brains, or Pavel Morpov on Twitter, and Slush, I'm sure you're going to find on Twitter. Or you can contact our Slush Pool account on Twitter as well. That's it for me.
All right, sounds great. Thank you so much for coming at the meetup. Make some noise.
I'm just going to quickly mention that I think it's like 2 in the morning in Prague right now, where Jan is. So thank you very much, Jan, for staying up so late and enlightening us with this absolutely amazing talk, which I'm going to have to look over many times. So this is going to be on YouTube. Probably read the AsicBoost paper and then go ahead and listen to that talk again. So.
So just quickly, also we covered like the very technical side of the AsicBoost, but really, why are we doing AsicBoost? So there is this big energy. As we've seen, we are still using some bits in every. Like I don't understand it as well as Jan, obviously, but there are some bits that we're going to keep using. So we're wasting less energy, from what I understand, on those bits, and we're using all our hashing power, all our energy on those other bits that we won't be that like. So we're keeping some bits static, and this is dedicated by the mask, I believe. And according to the mask, you're gonna keep those bits static, and these other bits that you don't keep static, obviously, you're gonna keep doing dynamic roll on it. So you're gonna keep on brute forcing basically the nonce until you find a solution. So that is the tweak with AsicBoost, basically, from my understanding. If we have any question, please don't hesitate. It's not a Q&A.
Yeah, so before we do the Q&A, we're just going to do the quick announcements, and then we're going to go to the Q&A. The Q&A is going to be live, so if you ask a question, you can expect that this is going to be on the live stream. So I'm just quickly going to invite Vincent Gauthier on stage right now, if he's in the room, or if he's not in the room, he's in the other room. Vincent? Oh, there you go. So Vincent Gauthier is going to make the announcements for Catallaxy. We're going to make a short announcement for Decentral, and then the Q&A, and then networking.
So, hi everybody, I'm Vincent. So, thanks a lot for being there. It was a very, very great event. So, I would like to thank again Francis and everybody that participated. So, it was amazing. And with Francis and RCGT, I'm one of the co-founders of Catallaxy, and we are very, very proud to host this event tonight at the BlockHouse. And I think it really shows the DNA of the BlockHouse. So we showcase the expertise from Montreal, from Quebec, and the connection we have with the international expert too. So we are only Tuesday today. And this is the second event that we are hosting here. So today was about mining. Yesterday we had an amazing movie. It was the premiere here in Montreal, a movie called Bit by Bit. That's going to be on Netflix pretty soon. And on Wednesday, Tuesday, and Friday, we are going to keep working very, very hard here at the BlockHouse. So the BlockHouse is a center of excellence, and we have saw some very, very amazing things that we are doing here. So if you are interested to know more, you can ask Arthur to see if you have questions about the BlockHouse, if you have questions about Catallaxy and the kind of service we are providing. There is some brochure, you can ask me, you can ask Francis. And over there we have like 15 people that are working very, very hard on blockchain, on Bitcoin. So if you are interested to know more, don't hesitate to reach us. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you, Vincent. And Gabrielle for the decentral announcement, please.
Thank you, Francis. Hi, everyone. I hope you all had a great time tonight. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the team from Catallaxy for hosting the event. I want to thank Jan from Slushpool for taking the time to explain all this very technical knowledge he has shared with us. Thank you, Jonathan, for the amazing content you gathered for us. And thank you for the Orion mining team for sharing your expertise and for the competitive initiative you've put through. I'm Gabriel. I'm Jonathan's partner for Decentral. I'm a co-founder as well. We have a couple announcements for you. We have hosting services. It's an all-inclusive package. You ship us your miners, and we take care of them. We take care of the power, the management, the maintenance, so on. The bad news is that we're full, big time. So we're working hard to get more space for you all. We have we're like increasing our facility to about 1 megawatt for this summer. So we're gonna have about 400 spots free this summer. If you ever want to reserve one, contact us. And the very big announcement is that we're getting a 5 megawatts facility ready for next winter. If you guys are willing to reserve your spots, please contact us at support@decentral.tech. We will give substantial rebate for anyone who reserve the spot for next year. I think it's a very, very valuable offer. And if you're interested in mining in the long run, you should definitely contact us. If you have other mining project, we have an IT team. We could help you building your mine and or other hosting or consultation services if you ever need it. So just don't be shy to reach to us. Bye bye. Have a very great night, everyone.
All right, thanks again so much. Also, obviously, Decentral, which put a lot of the content together. So on this note, we're gonna take the questions, and I'm gonna ask first the questions for Jan, so that we can let him go and he can go to bed. If he's still on the line, Arthur's Jan still there? Okay, perfect. So anybody have questions on AsicBoost for Jan or anything specifically for Jan? Any questions regarding mining pools in general? So they built the first mining pool. If you have a question about mining pools, it's probably, yes?
I had a question about the AsicBoost.
Sure. So a question about AsicBoost. Go ahead.
DragonMint, right? Aren't they supporting that?
So the question is DragonMint supporting AsicBoost? Yes, they are. And as we saw in the presentation, I think there was a block, right? A Bitcoin block mined with AsicBoost on a DragonMint. So the question is has anyone here seen a Dragon Mint? Because the gentleman in the crowd has not seen a Dragon Mint yet. So I'll say I haven't seen the Dragon Mint myself, although I'm looking outside the window, and every time I see like UPS, I'm getting super excited. We're expecting it this week, but I think Jonathan maybe wants to share something on that.
Yeah, well, we haven't seen them except for some pictures that are really scarce on the internet. Although you know that there was a block mined with AsicBoost compatible hardware, and so far the only one that we know of is a Dragon Mint. Also, there was a lot of hash rate that was added lately with the burn-in generation test of Elong. So we've seen on CK Pool and Slush Pool a lot of hash rate that went up. That was actually the Dragon Mints being burned in test. So we know for sure that they exist. What is still to be determined is will we receive them, but they for sure exist.
Yeah, obviously, I think we all know people who saw those miners. Just the other day on Twitter, CK from CK Pool. It was the same CK, right? So he, so there's a rumor going on, or I think it's a fact. Like, so the shipment was stuck in Hong Kong or is in Hong Kong, and some people actually went physically to get their machines at the Hong Kong distribution center. And when they did do that, they filmed a factory, which they said, you can see there's full of big boxes. So obviously they could have faked the video. It could be something random, but at this point, I mean, everybody's already bought the Halongs. I don't see why they would, continue to just defraud us.
I have something to say.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Jan.
We have since we needed to develop the version rolling feature. We were actually cooperating on some firmware development, and we actually tested a few units. The hardware exists and performs according to what the data sheets say, basically. Yeah.
All right, good enough for me. Maybe a follow-up question on that?
Something real quick. The reason I asked is I'm from Plattsburgh, where we had crypto mining, and now they've banned it for 18 months. I had a client who had 3,000 Dragon Mints coming, and they just didn't come, they didn't come, they didn't come, and they might come. But now that we can't mine anymore, I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I was curious if Canada might consider invading and taking Plattsburgh back over.
Well, if you guys are willing, if you let us. Anything else to add on AsicBoost or on the Halongs or?
So far, I know there's a CK pool, there's a slush pool that does AsicBoost compatibility, so there's still some limited choices at the moment, but we can expect that most of the pools will adopt the new code that is already out there on GitHub, already verifiable, and yeah, so obviously the big Chinese pool so far, we haven't seen any news and any moves on those statements so far, so it's still to be followed, but yeah, the technology is out there, and those that adopt it are obviously going to have a big advantage over the others.
I think there's support for version rolling in Alloy Pool as well. I think Luke DisJR implemented the feature as well.
Eligious?
Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure if he's running it on his instance, but the source code for his pool is open source. It's called Alloy Pool, so I think it's also in there. It's so not only CK Pool.
And from what I know, one of the only software that is still to be updated like most of the Bitcoin pool software already has this update, and one of the only one that you have to that still would need some work. So if there's any dev that is willing to, there's the NOMP that is on GitHub, so NOMP that would need an update for AsicBoost.
All right, so I think when we unbox those Halongs, that's going to be a pretty happy moment. I think it's probably going to be one of our biggest viewed video of all time when we actually show that Halong. So any other questions for Jan regarding AsicBoost, Halong, Slush, mining pools, or anything? All right, so on that note, Jan, if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. But we'll just give you a round of applause and feel free to go to bed if you want to go to bed. Thank you very much, Slush Pool, for sending us your CEO.
Thanks for having me there. If you guys want to connect to your hash rate, just do it. And if you're having some troubles using the Halongs or any other miners connecting to us, I'm sure our support guys can take care of that.
And sure, and Jan, can you tell us where can people follow you, what websites they should check out, or what's your Twitter, or where you share your knowledge?
My Twitter is Jan Brains, so JanBrains. I don't tweet that often, but I usually retweet what our /pool guys create on their account. And sometimes I have some genuine content as well. Actually, one thing that was also surprising for me, because we have been dealing with bigger farms lately, is sometimes the lack of understanding, like how the profitability computation works and what is actually the price of mining one Bitcoin. So if you look through my Twitter, you can find a link to one of my guests that actually explain and give an exact code snippet that you can just run into your Python interpreter, and you will see like how much it costs you to mine one Bitcoin on, let's say, on S9. You can obviously change the parameters. There are many Bitcoin calculators out there in the world, but the problem is that people don't get the insight how the calculation is actually done, and that means they're not able sometimes to estimate what is the profitability of their operation. Yeah, so this is my 2 cents. And anyway, thanks for being part of this meetup.
No, thank you, and thank you for sharing that piece of open source software. We're definitely going to look at that, and I think if anybody's running a Bitcoin mine,
I wouldn't call it a software, but it's a snippet.
Sure, right. But thank you for that. So we're gonna. Thank you, Jan. So we're gonna go ahead with some more questions for everyone, I guess. Nick?
My question is about mining difficulty. I think for anyone who's doing mining, two factors, whether it's the Bitcoin price increasing or difficulty increasing. By far, I think the factor which could make mining unprofitable is difficulty, which is increasing in a compounding manner. What's your prediction for mining difficulty going up in 2010?
I'll start first. So the question was about the Bitcoin mining difficulty, and I think people who are getting into mining are starting to realize that difficulty going up is it's not good. It's not your friend if you're a miner. And what are our predictions for 2018? So we are in kind of a divergent time, right? It's a kind of a statistical aberration where we're at now, in the sense that the hash power and price tend to stay in correlation, in equilibrium. And this equilibrium is very often achieved every 2 weeks with the difficulty adjustment. So you're gonna see, for example, when the price rises, the hashing power increases, and after 2 weeks, the difficulty adjusts, and the hashing power theoretically would decrease or stabilize, and vice versa. If the price of Bitcoin drops, then it's no longer profitable for you to mine, and then we expect theoretically some miners to unplug, the most inefficient miners to unplug, which brings down the difficulty and achieve that equilibrium. But that equilibrium has been kind of weird lately, and there's many reasons for that. The thing is, if you look at the price of Bitcoin, there's a huge bell curve, right? Like between about November and now, it's basically perfect bell curve, and the difficulty has just been going up, so that's not good for us, for miners. The increase in price of Bitcoin and kind of the hype around mining, I think, subsidized a lot of production, and there's a lot of hardware which is entering on the market, and that's been in production for quite some time. And that hardware, has already been bought by a lot of people. So the pressure of that hardware and those new machines entering on the market is so huge right now that even if the most inefficient miners are unplugging, there's so many new miners coming onto the network that difficulty keeps increasing. So that's my 2 cents on that. I can't foresee the future. One of the things that we're developing at Catallaxy is actually an indicator, which is supposed to, or we believe would tell you with quite a good degree of precision where you are in this imbalance. So how deviating from the mean you are, which in using backwards data, if you're really deviating from the mean, at an all-time high deviation, you could probably expect it to be going back to the mean soon. We're trying to, but you can't guess, because you would have to guess so many things. It's a huge mystery. However, historically, the hash rate just goes up. I mean, it's gone down, I think probably, 20 times in the entire, I don't know, actually. Like in the last few years, probably not many times. Hash rate keeps going up. So if you look at your ROI buying miners now versus a few months ago, you're going to be a bit disappointed.
Again, it also depends on the hardware you're going to be using. So, and we expect now that there's hardware that's going to be entering the market that will be using less than the best case scenario we see here. So we expect that those miners are going to be, they won't care so much for the difficulty, but those owning maybe some Canon with the chip 83222, well, those are going to be mad about the new Elong's shipping. So obviously it really depends on a lot of factors. It depends on the hardware you are going to be using, and again, it depends also on the price you're paying for your hardware. So again, I always repeat that because it's really important. You have your Canadian dollars and you have the value in coins of the machine you're buying. And if you're looking at the machine and it costs you the same amount that you're going to be mining to buy coins, then buy coins. By all means, buy coins, because that's what the market is asking you to do, not to add some more mining power. And so yeah, it really depends on your location, on how competitive you are, on the hardware you're going to be using. So obviously we expect a lot of difficulty this year because of all the new hardware. There's a lot of competition that is very welcomed in the Bitcoin mining industry. We have Orion, for instance, that has been announcing their new miners, Dragon Mint, even Canon that don't have necessarily a best machine, but they have at least a machine that can compete, that has the same efficiency now than a Bitmain S9. So we can expect first to see Bitmain lose some of its monopoly that they have right now, and we can expect, so we can expect the difficulty to have a steep increase. Yeah, sure.
And in a few years as well, the 7 nanometers are going to be coming on the market, hopefully, and that's going to be another huge leap of hash rate. So I think it's safe to assume that what we're in right now, I think the price of Bitcoin went up so fast and went down so fast that we're kind of in a weird stage. I think we can expect the difficulty, however, to keep going up over time as it has been doing for the past 8 years. And you have a follow-up question, Nick? Sure. you hire Catallaxy. All right. Next question. Yeah, so it's a great question. So the question is, a lot of people are trying to launch their business. They have, vetted ROI. They got, huge investments, a great business plan, and they're looking for financing. And they're going to the traditional source of financing, which is a bank, and the bank has no idea what Bitcoin mining is. And even beyond not lending, they might not even bank you if you're running a Bitcoin mining company. In fact, it is almost guaranteed that they will refuse your banking relationship if you are overtly saying that you're a Bitcoin company, and they will shut down your bank account if they find out that you are a Bitcoin company. And this is a phenomenon. I have over 100 testimonials in Canada. It's something that's been going on since 2013. It's a very well-known phenomenon in industry. What I can say is that I think the success of mining companies speaks for itself. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of mining companies that have a lot of taxes to pay because they made so much money. I think this is going to start to permeate in the professional services industry. Miners are coming to us with audits, with tax questions, and we see the books, and wow, like they're making money. If I was a bank, I would think about doing that. But there's also other solutions for lending. Again, our CGT and Catallaxy we have a few ideas. There are some specialized lenders and investors that are looking at helping entrepreneurs with capital for the purpose of launching a Bitcoin mine. I think there's a lot of capital out there, but maybe not on the banks for investors and lending. So I don't know if, Jonathan, you want to complete with that, anything or?
Well, just quickly on follow up on the banking situation. Even the Canadian government has been asking to the banks to actually accept Bitcoin mining businesses because they've been seeing all this somehow discrimination against Bitcoin miners, and obviously it doesn't help them to achieve this transparency they're trying to have in this space. So we're trying to keep open books, and the banks keep shutting us off. So we're in a situation where we have to keep our coins and try to make the government understand what we're doing and what we have and what we own. So the banks have been. It's not because of the government that the banks have been discriminatory. It's not known really. We can like suspect that they're doing this simply because they see this big wave of innovation coming their way, and they just don't really know what to do with it. So yeah.
And I'll just add that one of the reasons why we partnered at Catallaxy with an audit firm is because of the sincere belief that I don't want people to have to sell their Bitcoins to pass off a business opportunity. And if they can get their coins audited and on the books, they can use the coin as a collateral for a fiat currency loan and then have some capital in order to invest in a project they might not want to miss out on. For example, if your friend is launching a mine, you don't necessarily want to have to sell your Bitcoin to invest in that. You would like to go to the bank, use that Bitcoin as collateral like normal people do with their other assets. And we are developing these tools. So I'm pretty confident that if someone came to us with Bitcoins today and with some miners, we could put those assets on a balance sheet that a bank would consider to be valid. And before that, I tried to do that a while back, actually, to say I had foreign currency assets in the form of cryptos, and that did not fly. So we're trying to change that, and I think it's working. Yeah. So next question. Mm-hmm. Great question. Great question. I was having one of my tweet storms and tweet rants on that today. Yeah. So I do believe that they're coming out with an ASIC for Ethereum. It's really, to be completely expected, right? There's no such thing as ASIC resistance. There is only something as cost and opportunity cost, right? So if it's the price of Ethereum rose a lot a few months ago. Now it's obviously crashed a lot, but yeah. But back in the day, if you look at the price of Ethereum going to $1,000, it obviously reached a point in the mind of manufacturers where it was worth it to invest R&D into Ethereum because the price of Ether was high enough. So I do believe that. I'm not sure about Bitmain specifically, but I'm pretty sure there's an Ethereum ASIC somewhere out there, and that they're going to be commercialized. As to what's going to happen from that's interesting. So, well, the stocks of NVIDIA and AMD going down, it was obviously because a large portion of their business is GPU mining, and a large portion of the GPU mining market is Ethereum, being the GPU mineable cryptocurrency with the highest market value. Yeah, right. Yeah, by far. So to be expected. What's going to happen next on Ethereum? That's a good question. So in the beginning, I was really afraid. It's a very, very good question, actually. So when Ethereum moves to proof of stake, the miners that have invested their money in capital into the hardware to mine Ethereum will lose their income. And if there hadn't been an Ethereum ASIC, I am absolutely certain that the proof of stake fork that Ethereum wants to do would have failed, because all the people that invested in GPUs, they're all tied, it's all centralized, there's investment funds, and a lot of people that have invested in mining have an influence over a lot of startups, over a lot of people. So I was like, okay, so you're gonna convince all the big investors in Ethereum mining to just all move to proof of stake? I think that was gonna be a really difficult challenge but now, everybody that has invested in GPU mining in Ethereum is just about to get, destroyed by the ASICs. So, they're fine, let's move to proof of stake. Anyway, my investment in GPUs is worthless. So ironically, this may have helped the proof of stake transition. This is like a lot of people's incentives being challenged. It's complicated, but it's definitely, I would say in French, c'est une pierre dans la mare. It's a rock in the puddle, and now the mud is coming up, and we don't know what's going to come out of that. But thanks for sharing that. That's absolutely massive news, and it's extremely relevant to this meetup. Thank you.
Just a 2 cents on that, Francis.
Okay. Yes. Good.
We don't really believe it's going to be an ASIC breaker as Bitcoin was, like a 50-time step. They're talking more something around 25 to 50% more efficiency. So don't close your GPU mine yet.
Okay, so that's a piece of I didn't have. I didn't read that announcement. I didn't know there were any specs released. Yeah. But yeah, sure. Obviously, if it could be the same as just a really, really good new graphic cards coming on the market, which is 50% better. I don't know. But when we think about releasing an ASIC, I think normally we think about something which is a higher order of magnitude of efficiency. But we'll see.
We've also seen the same case with, for instance, Kryptonite. And a funny thing is, some people seem to be hostile to ASICs. But there's also been some GPUs exactly that has achieved a big like percentage of efficiency, of better efficiency. So, for instance, the Vega cards back in the days on Monero, they did get a big up of efficiency, and back then nobody was talking about forking Monero or whatever. Now, since it's an ASIC and since it's Bitmain, and honestly, I don't like the monopoly that Bitmain has right now, but I think in respect of what happened with Bitcoin, it really Bitmain has achieved this monopoly through its own skill in some sense, and they're not they don't necessarily have, they do have this control over the manufacturing market, but they don't have necessarily this control over the hash power, or we can't know for sure. With Monero, it might have been already the case, because those miners, we've seen big fluctuations in the hash rate of Monero some months ago. It might have been those ASIC that have been put in, like already into the market. Well, not into the market, but that have been put on into the mining game. And finally, they've put it on the market when the proof of work was announced to be changed. So and it really, like, there's a lot of perspective into all that, because again, all those blockchains, they're all competing for space, for electricity, for proof of work. So ultimately, in my point of view, we are going to see Bitcoin aggregate all that proof of work. So we've seen, for instance, with Dash, the D3, since it's been ASICified, if we want to call it that way, well, there was a steep difficulty in Greece, obviously, and now that Dash is not as profitable as Bitcoin, what really happens is all the spots that has energy to host proof of work, they're slowly clearing away the D3s, because it won't make sense for them to mine Dash, for instance, instead of Bitcoin, when Bitcoin has a bigger profitability. So those forces, I believe, will make even the different proof of work compete against each other for electricity and space, for room. So what we might see in the future is actually the ASICs. I believe we might see the ASICs breaking some of the altcoins, actually, because, well, some of the altcoins that are out there don't necessarily have a true value proposition, and those coins will probably, when miners get all those coins and can't dump those coins, well, those coins will probably just die.
Yeah, great answer to a very complicated question. And I'll just add that NVIDIA and AMD, one of the two, actually warned investors a few months ago, saying, by the way, you know, like that stock price and all those sales, that's not going to last forever. This is definitely something we didn't expect. They were very careful to tell the investors this will not last. And, you know, safe for a particular cryptocurrency that I've been looking into, that's GPU mineable. There's not a lot, I think, of a lot of potential for GPU mining. I mean, there is, but I'm not, you know, I'm not extremely bullish. Like, if GPU mining was like a stock, I wouldn't. I might still buy it now, but I'm not gonna hold that for long term. I think Jonathan is correct that we're moving to lesser and lesser proof of work chains. And if we're going to lesser and lesser proof of work chains, then they're going to congregate to the ones that are around the ASICs, which are the most secure. How much time do we have? Does anybody have some questions for Orion Mining on their product or announcement? I'll let you ask a question again, since the first one was really good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll try to address a couple parts to that. So when you're talking about Samsung, the question was just Samsung has made some announcements about basically getting into the ASIC game, and just what are our thoughts, and they specifically mentioned targeting the Asian and Chinese market, and for our products, are we planning on making them available in North America? Is that right? So yeah, when you're talking about Samsung, you're talking about the foundry, right? Samsung's obviously a big company, but one of the things they do is they have a foundry, much like TSMC does in Taiwan, which is sort of the leading one that makes the chips for Bitmain, makes the chips for Apple. Global Foundries is another big one. Intel is a foundry. So they're making the chips that we talked about. Samsung came out with an announcement that said they want to start getting into the ASIC game for miners. Right now, we're not ready to publicly announce which foundries we're going to be working with. But if you remember in my presentation, our team is based in Asia, has been there a long time. We have a lot of our team in Taiwan, so When the time comes, we can talk about it. But I think the competition is healthy. We're keeping close tabs on what Samsung is doing, and I think that's good. As far as where we're going to do our distribution, definitely we're opening up our store to be available to purchase anywhere around the world. Sure.
Can you discuss price on your product?
So we're not ready to announce the retail price, which we'll have online yet. But again, right now we've been talking to the larger mining operations. So certainly we know we're new to the game, and we have to make pricing attractive enough for people to go with us. So we have been talking to the larger mining operations, doing some big volumes and volume discounts. So anyone that's interested in doing a bulk order, happy to sign an NDA. We can share a price list. We can share our volume discounts. But whenever the online store goes live, that's when we'll have the retail price to the public. But I can say it will be competitive. If you break it down from a dollars per terahash perspective, it'll be competitive to what's out there now. Yep, sure. So I will say, at this point I can say that's something that we are actively looking into right now. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Just a small add-up, Samsung, they're manufacturing already some ASICs, actually. They're not doing it themselves for their brand, but they're doing it for the Watts miner. But actually, I've been reading there's a lot of failure rates with those, so I wouldn't recommend them, but I still don't own any Watts miner, so I don't really know. Oh, you have one? Is it working good? Eating a lot? Yeah, they all eat a lot. Yes, sir. Rule of thumb, well, again, I would...
A rule of thumb to calculate the profitability of the miner, the question.
Yeah, so well, what I really do is I look at the difficulty, and a bit like our guest said there, so what we... thank you, sir. So... So what you're going to want to do is take maybe an average of the last 12 or 18 months for the hash rate difficulty, and you're going to maybe take this average and put it for the next 18 months. Obviously, we can't predict the future. It's not a perfect metric, but it helps you a lot to figure out what's coming for you. And then you can simply do and it's all on Bitcoin Stack, I believe. So you can just find the formula to count in Excel, like how many coins are going to generate based on the hash rate at this given date. And obviously, you change it every 2 weeks from the beginning of the next difficulty adjustment, and then you're going to be able to see, for instance, in 12 months or 18 months, how many coins you expect to mine based on that assumption that the difficulty is going to be growing up at the same rate. Is that... Okay, so the question is, how long should we wait to amortize the miner? So I'd say there's no good answer to this question, because the thing is, with generation that comes and go, we've seen that the mining phases outcompete the previous batches of miners. So for instance, lately I have been waiting for the Dragon Mints to first see if they exist, and second, well, since they're bringing us to this next mining phase, well, I've expected that all the other units will lose in profitability. So yeah, it really depends on, first, your risk tolerance, how you're doing it. Are you doing it as a hobbyist? Are you doing it as a professional? And again, there's also a lot of strategies out there. So we've talked about the hash rate that compounds, but you can also compound as the hash rate. So you can just look at for instance, the hash rate goes plus 15%. Well, you just take your operation and do plus 15%, you follow the hash rate. So there's a lot of strategies. It really depends on what you're doing and your size.
Yeah, and it's also very dependent on the hash rate, because, obviously if the hash rate stays the same, then the depreciation of your miner is very low, right? It's not that the machines break down; it's that they become uncompetitive. So l'amortissement, it depends on your predictions of the hash rate in the future, or the speed of your degradation compared to the other Bitcoin miners. All right, so no more questions? Really? Okay. All right, one more?
Yeah. Everybody talks about mining, but when you're mining with a pool, your hash rate has to do with your reward. So have you ever really calculated, I mean, whether you have 100 miners or 1,000 miners? I mean, 1,000 miners, you have to invest a whole lot more capital in it, so you're going to get a bigger part of the reward for each block found. But isn't it relative to what you had 100 miners with only this much invested? In other words, you know, the more miners you have doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more reward, but at what cost in terms of capital? What is your ROI for 10 miners to 100 miners to 1,000 miners? I mean, shouldn't it actually be kind of on the level?
Linear?
Yeah, linear.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so in other words, whether you have one miner or 10, it doesn't necessarily mean you're making less money than the guy with 100 miners.
Yeah, so the efficiencies will be, if you have a bigger operation, you'll achieve efficiencies of scale, for example, in electricity rates or staff or something like that. However, in this case, you're thinking about miners which operate mines. In my case, I'm a miner, I don't operate a mine. I place my miner in someone else's mine. So we're achieving these economies of scale through co-hosting. And in that case, my personal increase of miner is just linear, right? Because but as a general concept, mines can get economies of scale. So when you go from like, you know, obviously if you go from like 50 kilowatts to like 1 megawatt, you're going to be producing your Bitcoins at much cheaper per unit. And I'll let the actual professional miner answer that.
Well, again, there's also the infrastructure costs. So, for instance, your HVAC or AC, if you're still using AC. There's the employees. So, again, it depends on if you're a hobbyist or if you're doing it professionally. So, if you're a hobbyist, having 1 machine or 10 machines is probably linear in that case. Linear during this very era, obviously. But once you get to businesses, so yeah, Hydro-Quebec has, for instance, here in Quebec, Hydro-Quebec has varying rates. So the more you consume, the best the rate you're supposed to have. Now they are doing some revisions on that. I believe it's a lot because they've been scared a lot by all the demand. Again, this demand doesn't make sense. So I expect that they're going to be doing some revisions on all that. But yeah, so it's going to be linear only if you use the same, like you have the same infrastructure. But when you add infrastructure, obviously your infrastructure cost per unit drops. So you're achieving some efficiency here, and as the more units you have, the more you can compound also. So this compounding effect will let you add more units and be less affected by the difficulty that keeps increasing.
We planned for 5 more minutes, but if there's no other question, I think we'll just get to the networking part, and you guys will go and do business with each other and strike deals and do all the good stuff. So thank you guys for coming and for listening through 2 hours of knowledge. And gonna quickly thank the live viewers. I think there was at some point 175 live viewers, and obviously we're gonna thank the World Crypto Network, our really good friends. Vortex and Mad Bitcoins are our friends there, which let us use their very popular platform to disseminate our knowledge. And maybe Jonathan, I'll let you announce a little project that we were working on. On va passer en français, donc on peut peut-être arrêter le live stream ici, on va passer en français. Donc comme vous pouvez imaginer, on a un challenge linguistique ici, c'est-à-dire qu'on passe énormément